to What's Your Story? I'm Judy Mario, and we're so happy to have you with us here today. We have a wonderful guest for you. Her name is Pia Ault, and she is a leadership coach, and she specializes in equine facilitated learning, including horses as coach teacher in the development and transformation of people. Now that's interesting. She lives in Spain, but she works globally and she works with leaders and individuals. Um, she just is so passionate about emotions and regularly holds workshops and webinars about emotional regulation. I think we're really going to enjoy this. So, Pia, thank you for being here today.
Hi, Judy. Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you here. This is so fascinating to me because it's different from what the normal coaches I have. You know, they don't normally use horses as a part of the what would you call it? As a part of the treatment or a part of the process?
The guidance,
Yeah,
perhaps.
the guidance. I like that. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, how did it get started?
Wow. Okay. Well, I've been passionate about horses my entire life, but as any girl probably would be growing up. But it really wasn't until I um, started. I left corporate and I started to become a coach. I was going through certification, and I I've been around horses my entire life, but didn't really realize that you could use them for other things than riding. And so I had heard a little bit about how they could help leaders, in businesses. I knew that there were several companies. This was when I was based in Dubai that were doing activities and team building with using horses. And I thought, I wonder if you can use horses in coaching. And lo and behold, when I Googled it, it already existed. And so when I did my coaching certification, soon thereafter, I branched out and did an additional certification and training in horse assisted coaching. It's just a little bit deeper because you you don't have to like or love or be around or even own a horse, but of course that helps. But there's a lot of additional training. You really need to kind of be able to observe and pay attention and notice what's going on with the horse when you put a horse and a human together. But that's how it all started. So that was about 10 years ago.
That's amazing. Now, what background led you to eventually transition into coaching?
I had been, as all good little girls, getting out of college, getting my degree, getting married, having kids, worked my way up through corporate, and I started to, I guess in my early 40s, started coaching, or well, I wouldn't say coaching. I was mentoring other
Mhm.
women coming up in the corporate environment, and I was in technology, in IT and technology, and that's very male dominated. So anytime you could lift up another woman, anytime you can help them break the glass ceiling, I think it's important to do so. And I started mentoring younger managers in my industry, and I thought, well, this is something that I really like. If I could live my life over again, I would have loved to have been a psychologist or
Mhm.
therapist or something like that. But the next best thing was to get myself educated and make the jump from corporate into helping others with exactly the issues that I had been going through in corporate. So yeah, that's kind of how it that was the road in. And I actually had to leave corporate, say goodbye to that stage in my life, to fully immerse myself into coaching and the mission of helping others.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. So, what are some examples of people you've helped, and what have you helped them with?
Oh, wow, there's so many. I've helped hundreds. A couple of real special ones come to mind. I've recently actually helped a young woman in the UAE leave her position that she was in for 6 years, 7 years, um, branch out into another career path, but doing so having to leave a very dominating, controlling, I would say narcissistic, but we're not here to diagnose. But she was in a very tough spot. and really needed some help. And I coached her for about a year and a half, and she finally took the jump. And she's recently just signed another contract and is going into another job. That's special for several reasons. She had all of the intent, all of the motivation. She just needed to reach into herself to overcome a little bit of fear and also the uncertainty as to what is there for her and what is she worth, what's her value outside of the control of this person that was her, her leader for so many years. And that can be very scary. So I consider that really special, in order to help, that I was able to help her. Over time there have been many leaders, both women and men, CEOs, CXOs, that I've helped from just getting to a bigger version of themselves, a higher version of themselves, not necessarily thinking they could do it, maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome, not thinking they were a good enough leader, building more empathy, going into that emotional realm and looking deep into themselves. And I think that's my niche. That's where I can help them. And that's really who, I think I get the most success.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, success with. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated with the horse part of it. It's like I don't think the horse can talk to us and tell us how to straighten our life out. Uh, I wish they could. So, why
You'll be
horses?
surprised. They use obviously they use body language. But yeah, I mean, having a conversation with a horse could sound a little bit like you're watching the, the show where they're talking. What was it, Ed?
Yes,
The horse?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Mr. Ed.
Um, they give us so much in terms of body language and signs and signals. And a lot of it is just our human ability to notice what's going on with them when they're with us. Um, they are really true mirrors of our behaviors and our attitudes. And um, it's not that it feels like they look into your soul. They probably don't, but they look at you and they see somebody, an entity, or a being that either can keep them safe or not keep them safe. For them, it's all about survival. And if you can pay attention to what they pay attention to, their fears or their concerns about their environment, and you can connect with them and keep them safe and build that trust, they will want to be with you. And so when they walk away from you and they don't want to be with you, it's likely that you just haven't built that connection. They don't trust you. They don't feel that you can keep them safe. So they are giving you signals all the time. They really are talking to you, but without the verbal language.
Yes, yes. It's really fascinating. I,
It's
when
very
I
powerful.
Yes, when I first moved to South Africa, I took driving lessons to learn to drive on the other side of the road because it was making me extremely nervous. And I thought, well, I should take a class. And at the end of the class, the man said to me, um, "Perhaps you should get a horse." And I thought, and ever since then, when I hear about that, I think, well, maybe a horse would have helped me, a great deal. I think he was talking about my driving, but I love horses. I think they're absolutely wonderful, and I just find it fascinating that you use them in the treatment. Do people find that strange when you tell them you're going to do that?
Um, I don't know if they find it strange. Maybe they find it a little bit different. There's a lot to be said when we do learning by doing, and the learning sticks with us. I don't think I've ever had any client that have said, "Oh, I don't think I want to do that. That's weird or strange." I
Mhm.
think most of my clients have been curious, uh, and also apprehensive, nervous. It's natural. This is something that is new, and it is strange, but most of my clients have been open, unless I've had a couple of people that unfortunately have been allergic, and so we haven't been able to get close to the horse. But even people who are very nervous and don't necessarily want to get close to the horse at at first, we start with the person outside of the pen or the arena, and then slowly kind of build up. So there are ways to get to overcome that fear. But most of the people that I have worked with, and this has been a good 10 years now, really just embrace it. We do a lot of safety instructions and safety orientation before we don't just say, okay, here's a herd of 10 people, why don't you just go in and have yourself a ball. We
Yeah.
really do safety orientation. We illustrate where should you be in relation to the horse. Don't be right behind it, it can kick. Don't be right in front of the mouth, it can bite. So we go through all of that when we before we engage with the client, both in teams and also one-to-one. I go over all of the different precautions. I don't just let my client loose and say, okay, have at it. So
Do
yeah.
they walk around with the horse? Do they ride the horse? What happens with the whole relationship they have with the horse?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that, because none of what I do involves riding. um, what I do is horse assisted learning or horse assisted coaching on the ground. So it's all ground activities, practices, exercises, and there's no real agenda. The client might come to me with a certain issue, like maybe they want to be a better communicator, or they want to overcome a certain fear, or whatever the issue is. We talk about it before we engage with the horse, and then it really is up to what wants to happen that happens. I might have an idea of what we want to do, but it all happens in the moment. And with a horse, they don't have an agenda, they don't have a timeline. You just kind of are in the moment with them. So it really is kind of whatever wants to happen happens. But sometimes we take a walk with the horse, sometimes they just stand with the horse for a long time connecting, and it can be very emotional for the person to be close to the horse and to stroke its neck and to feel that bond. When that connection happens and the horse turns its head and it stands very close to you, lots of things can bubble up in the person. Memories, images of loved ones. Yeah, it's hard to say what goes through their mind, but we kind of debrief it and talk about it afterwards. But in the moment, I just let it happen, whatever wants to happen.
Good. That sounds great. Now, how does emotional intelligence and emotions fit in with all of this?
Well, so good question again. I haven't had an experience myself with the horse without having some emotion come up, usually several. And it's really interesting for me when I first had, so in order to learn horse assisted coaching and engagement, I obviously went through programs myself. You kind of have to go through it yourself and see what it's like. And I remember I've been around horses my entire life, but I never thought about having to set appropriate boundaries with them. So, one of the things that came up for me when I was engaging with the horse and I was being taught this was that I wasn't really good at setting boundaries, and I didn't know I had to set a boundary. So, of course, the horse came over and started getting closer. And I remember the facilitator saying, or the coach at the time saying, so you just want to respect the horse's space and you want the horse to respect your space. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. Okay, I get it. And it just kept coming and it kept coming. And I'm all of a sudden, and this is a big horse. It's 1,200 pounds and, 6 foot tall and very powerful. And I thought, okay, it's coming closer. And I just kind of reached out my hand and I'm like, okay, you can stop there. And of course, it wasn't stopping. It didn't pay attention to my hand. So some of the emotions that come up in that moment might be fear, might be joy, excitement, anxiety, because what's going to happen? And for me, not setting the appropriate boundary and letting that horse come into my space. While I love horses, the coach asked me if that was a person that you don't necessarily like, or if it was a boss where you have to have that appropriate space, what would that be like for you? And I was like, oh, well, I would have considered that rude and kind of. So emotional intelligence and the emotional awareness is extremely important. You don't have to be an emotional expert or even be aware of your emotions or even be able to name what you're feeling. You'll feel something, and just describing that when you're with the horse and in the debrief, can be ever so helpful. You don't have to exactly name the emotion, but you can describe the feeling. Oh, I had butterflies in my stomach. Okay, well, that can be joy or anxiety or nervousness or fear. And I also felt that the horse kind of came at me quite strongly, and that made me kind of irritated. So there we are: anger, irritation, frustration. So without knowing the emotions, the client still names them. And it's
Mm.
really important to be able to kind of identify what's coming up for you at the time that you're engaging with the horse, because that could relate to your issues in real life.
Yes, it's amazing how many women that I know do not know how to set boundaries with people. I don't know if that comes from our childhood, that we're told to do what we're told, or what, but I can see where this would really help. To be able to do that with a horse would give you an extreme amount of confidence and power, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. I was horrible at setting boundaries from very young, and it played out with my mom kind of being controlling and stepping over where she shouldn't step over.
Mm.
And I've had to deal with that, but I think a lot of it is in our conditioning. We are taught to be good little girls, don't have temper tantrums, don't speak up, don't voice things in the workplace that you might not know anything about, or just all kinds of versions of that. And so we compromise, we sacrifice, and we are not good at saying no or pushing back because we're afraid of hurting someone else's feelings, making them mad, or whatever it may be. But yeah, I think it's inherent in our conditioning.
I think one of the things that affected me was I was told not to contradict other people. And so, unfortunately, when I got older, contradiction was an issue. And many times in business, especially if you're a leader, I mean, you do have to contradict people. And that was a real difficult one for me. What have you seen with the leaders that you're working with? Have you seen particular issues for leaders versus people who perhaps don't lead a group of people or a team?
Yeah, I think there are certain behaviors that show up if you're a leader of a team, I think it has to do with how close you are to the team. So if you're, for example, a CEO, you might be a little bit more remotely detached from a team because you've got, you're higher up, you're more visionary, you're not so in the trenches with the teams. You have teams, and you have direct employees, but you're still removed, versus a person who's leading a direct team maybe at a lower level and have more engagement, day to day. There definitely are differences in behaviors and characteristics in terms of how well they set boundaries, how empathic they are, and also how they handle conflict. So I think it plays out in different ways. Handling conflict, um, being able to handle conflict, because conflict is healthy. It really isn't something that we need to avoid, but handling the conflict in an
Mhm.
appropriate way and letting everybody speak and have a voice, I think is very important. And not a lot of people feel comfortable about that. They try to
Oh,
avoid conflict, right? And
yeah.
likewise with when you have uncertainty, there's the economy is doing strange things, the market, your competition, you're leading a company and you're leading that whole team. As a CEO, you have a tremendous burden on your shoulders, but you don't have to carry that burden alone. You could open up and share that leadership and that burden and that uncertainty with the rest of your team, and then seeing what's ahead and prepare for it and plan for it so that it doesn't become, yeah, an anxious thing you want to overcome, but meeting it head on and being able to know how to deal with it. So yeah,
Right.
I think that there's different characteristics and different skills that play out depending on how removed or how close you are to a team.
when you're working with these people and the horse, I'm back to the horse again because I'm fascinated with that. Um, are these horses particularly trained? I mean, are they specially trained to deal with people and their emotions? Do you introduce the people to more than one horse? Um, is it just some special horse that has the ability to do this? How does all that work?
Uh, you don't need to have a special, like, they don't need to be specially trained in this work. We work a lot of times with horses in equestrian centers or stables that perhaps already are involved in working with special needs children, or young people or adults, or riding with the disabled is another organization. But that's not the only horses we go with. You can use any horse. We always check the horse first. You can use any horse, except I don't work particularly with stallions. I try to stay away from stallions. They a little bit different personality there. But if we do a team workshop with a company or employees, we go in the day before and we assess the horses. We select which ones are going to be good. Can they do, are they okay being led? Can they deal with different basic commands, just to make sure that they're safe? But
Yes.
we don't alter their personality. That the horse is who the horse is, and we don't go in and go, oh, we want an extroverted horse and somebody who's going to love women or men, or we don't do that. We can't do that. We assess them in terms of, are they able to follow commands? Are they able to be with the person? Do they scare easily of distractions? But you also don't want a docile kind of Humpty Dumpty horse, because it's not really going to want to engage. So I've worked with so many different characters in terms of horses. They really do have their own personality as well, and that comes through when you do the work. If the horse is motivated by fun and play, it's going to show up.
Mm,
If it's quiet and it just kind of wants to just stand there and follow another horse, well, then that'll have some message to a person, because you kind of attract it to the different behaviors, and different behaviors show up both between the horse and the person. So yeah, again, this all happens in the moment, but we don't really go in and train horses just for this
yeah. I just
necessarily.
wondered
Yeah.
because, you know, yeah, I live in the Wild West, and so we have a lot of horses in this area, and I have a
Yeah.
lot of people on the show that work with horses from time to time, or with the rodeos and things like that. And so I'm just fascinated because I think this kind of therapy is so special, and it's I can see it with some of the smaller animals like a cat or a dog. They seem to adjust real well to people, and they seem to understand what I say to them. Do horses understand our English language like the cats and dogs do?
They probably understand voice commands if that's the way you've trained them, or some people train with a clicker, or with, certainly they understand your body language.
Mhm.
And I've had my horse for almost 14 years now, and she's very in tune with how I walk. And I talk to her. I don't know that she understands, when I say, oh my God, you're so cute today, I love you. I think she understands the tone and
Mhm.
my demeanor when I say it, and how I show up with my body. Um, but yeah, they pick up mostly on your body language. Are you authentic? Are you congruent? Do you act the way you come across? Like, if you are really afraid inside, but you come across with bravado, that there's no congruence there. So they really look for people who are authentically aligned, congruent in their actions and their mind and their body, and that's what they react to.
Yeah, yeah. So the horse can really tell when you're afraid of them, or when don't like animals, especially big animals. They can tell that, right?
They can definitely sense that. I don't know that they understand that it's fear, but if you're afraid of going in to meet them in in the arena and you're hesitant, they might look around and go, well, why should I be with that person? If they're afraid of something, what is it that they're afraid of? Should I be afraid then? Because they're always scanning their environment. And so they may not understand that you're afraid of them. They're going to think that you might be afraid of something else. And do they need to be afraid? So it's that trust and that congruence and that comfort in the environment, in the immediate environment, that there is no threat, that they can be with you without being afraid, that you're
That
going to keep them safe.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. If someone in our audience wanted to learn more about what you do or hire you as a coach, how would they go about doing that? Where would they find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Pia Alt Coaching. I'm also, I've got my website, Caballas Coaching or caballasconsulting.com. I have an Instagram page that's linked to my Facebook. I can put it in the chat if you want the link, because I think it's at Pia Alt 3 or something like that. I'm also on LinkedIn under Pia Alt. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to connect and see what it is that I'm working on.
Wonderful. You wrote us a fabulous article last issue of our Choices magazine. There was a horse in that picture with you there, and you said that horse had recently passed away. Is that correct?
I don't remember if that was the horse in the picture or if that was my horse, but I recently did some additional training and certification with an organization in the US called Teaching Horse. And they do leadership workshops. They work with leaders in various industries. And we were actually doing the certification and the training at Return to Freedom, which is a horse conservation. They rescue horses, because I'm sure you're aware, Judy, if you're an animal lover and love horses. In the US, they're rounding up a lot of the wild Mustangs and the wild horses. We don't have to get into that, but as a result of that, there are many organizations that are rescuing the horses, taking them and preventing them from, going to kill pens and slaughter. And so Return to Freedom is one of those organizations that have rescued hundreds of horses and are part of a program where they have a biologist on board, they have a vet, they help the BLM, with sterilization programs, etc. But they have a lot of wild horses that are at their campus up in Northern California or North Central California. And we were able to be among these wild horses who are roaming on, thousands of acres. And one of those horses was the one that I was describing in that article. She wanted to be in the herd. She was getting old. Her teeth were, not working the way they should, so she couldn't eat. And she was just losing weight. And she was in her early 30s, so she'd had a good long life.
Mm.
And I was fortunate enough to witness her last, part of her last days, connected with her. She was so frail. She was so thin. And after I left, I was told that she passed very peacefully among the herd, and they stood over her. So yeah, it was sad, but she had a long life, and she went out on her own terms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing to see them in the wild. I had the opportunity to spend some time on a ranch up near Winnemucca, Nevada, which is northern Nevada. And there's just thousands of acres out there where horses run free. And I'll never forget the first time I was out riding, and this whole herd of wild horses went by with this beautiful black stallion leading them. And it was such a breathtaking moment. It was just amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you are part of the Women Thrive organization, right?
I am indeed. Yeah.
Are you going to be speaking again this year?
I will be speaking when we have I think it's, during the Women's International or International Women's Day or International Women's Month. It's going to be in March. I am speaking live. I've got one of the slots. And I also have several speaker cases leading up to that. So for the next few months, I'll be speaking just, short slots, 5-minute slots, part of the whole coaching program. And it's so exciting. And I know you were part of it last year.
Yes, it was
So
wonderful.
yeah, It's really opened up a whole new networking venue for me, and I'm learning so much. I mean, it's not only about learning how to public speak, you know, it's the writing, it's the presentation, it's how you market yourself, and it's a fantastic experience, and also of all these women's stories.
Oh, they're
It's
amazing.
just amazing. Yeah, yeah, and to be part of that, knowing that if you're facing something, you're not alone, you know, there's somebody else out there that's facing what you've been facing, however you grew up, however your situation or your story, is coming about, and I love that community, that sisterhood. It's very
Yes,
powerful.
I just highly recommend it for any woman. It was such a wonderful experience for me, and I was so glad I did it. And I met so many wonderful people like you and the other ladies that have been on my show. You know, they've just been fascinating because they come together from so many walks of life, and now some of you are writing for the magazine, and I love that because people read them and they're like, oh, these people are in another country, or these people are really different, or they're doing something I've never heard of before. And it really has added to my magazine to have these incredible women writing for it. So I thank you for doing that, and I hope you'll continue to do that. It'd be great to have your articles. And we're running out of time. I'm so sorry because you're
It
so
went fast.
you did. You're so interesting. It went so fast, and I looked up at the clock and I went, "Oh, we're out of time." But thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh,
Tell
my
them one more
pleasure.
time how to find you, and you're on Facebook, Instagram. You're everywhere, and we've got your website and
Yeah,
email going across the bottom of
yes.
the screen. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
My pleasure to be on. Thank you so much for letting me share my stories about the horses.
Well, it's our pleasure. And thank you for being with us again today. I hope you enjoyed this guest. I mean, we have such incredible guests. I'm always so thrilled to bring them to you. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.